Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. In the last part we finished off our duties over in Hollow Bastion and now we're in the final world of the game. I wonder where that Ansem feller went.
Dive into the most dangerous place and we'll find him!
This room I've always found a little bit weird because you can actually effectively skip 90% of what's here. There's a save point on a lower portion that's right next to an exit that leads to the next chunk of the area. But there's a shitload of treasure chests, as well as optional combat encounters here with angel stars and the like to get some pretty good materials out of it. So something that I really like about the end of the world as an endgame destination is that it truly just feels very alien and unknowable, like you're really not supposed to be here or this place should not be able to exist whatsoever. And while I think other endgame Kingdom Hearts worlds have a similar energy, specifically the ones in 2 and 3, none of them ever quite reached this level, and I feel like that really is because this game had no greater ambitions, I suppose, where initially this was just going to be a one-off, cute little story, but it ended up becoming a major series, and later games, due to that, tie in their endgames more to that overarching narrative, and thus they feel like their final areas belong more in their universe, so to speak. With that said, I think my favorite endgame world to adventure through is probably the one in Kingdom Hearts 2, but that's largely because I think that's just paced better. End of the world, for all of its strong suits, I think, is a very small area that kind of goes back and forth on its pacing, and that's largely because of Kingdom Hearts 1's own unique design idiosyncrasies, where you can feel the platforming roots more and the focus on that more. I'll talk more in depth about it when we get to the credits, but there is a very distinct energy due to elements like that in Kingdom Hearts 1 that I really respect and can see why people have it be their favorite still all these years later. So a moment ago, we got the Meteor Strike Rod for Donald. That's another one that's pretty much completely physically minded for him. Increases Donald's strength by 13, is a long-length rod, which is pretty rare for him. It has a crit damage bonus of 4, I believe, and 90 recoil, so he can deflect a lot of attacks with it, but again, there's not many reasons why I would ever build Donald into a physically minded build. And that's on top of the whole factor where you should always focus on Sora's build first, be it his AP, his MP, his strength, all that jazz, as since he's the player character that you're always in control of, whatever differences to stats you make for him matter a lot more. Heck, you can really make the argument, especially in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, where the abilities you prioritize for Donald and Goofy should be the ones that actively boost Sora up as well in some form rather than just the character that has the ability, as that'll be more prevalent in a lot of endgame or post-game adjacent battles should they be relevant at all. With that gonna be collected, we've now finished off this little gem-like room, so we want to glide over here, use this save point, and then jump into the glowing light. You don't need to use this save point, but better safe than sorry in most instances. Welcome to the World Terminus, an area that can be kind of interesting depending on how you actively progress throughout the game. The way this area works is that it's several platforms in a row with purple energy pillars erupting out of them. Each of these pillars are portals that lead you to a room from one of the worlds in the game with a bunch of Heartless within it. Sometimes they theme the Heartless around the world itself, sometimes it's just effectively a difficulty curve upwards throughout the Heartless cast we've seen throughout the game. Upon clearing one of these rooms, there's a treasure chest you can grab, the contents of which depends on whether or not you're playing Final Mix or Vanilla. Here in Final Mix, it's largely going to be synthesis materials. Back in Vanilla, it was a second copy of the accessory you got largely for beating a boss fight in a world. For instance, while we just got a Spirit Gem here in Final Mix there, in Vanilla you would have gotten a Brave Warrior accessory there, the same thing we got for actively beating the Guard Armor. The thing is about this section, though, is you can progress onwards by touching the little blue energy balls beyond the pillars. For me, every single one of those blue energy balls is going to be there by default, but depending on your actions in the game thus far, they might not be. You can actively skip a world's combat section in question here, like this Wonderland room, if you sealed the keyhole within that world. So, since you need to seal the keyhole for Wonderland in plot, you can always skip this one, but you might not be able to, say, skip the one for Olympus Coliseum, or some of the worlds in the second set of worlds in the case you didn't explore them all the way. If you're actively doing the trophy in modern releases of this game to beat the game in under a certain time frame, you're probably going to be forced to do some of these combat sections because that will unlock the energy ball needed to progress on in the World Terminus itself. I've always had a weird attachment to moments like this in games. I think it largely comes down to an effect of looking back on the journey at its climax kind of deal. It's why I also really like the World of Chaos, for instance, in Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which I'll cover at some point, probably. In the meanwhile, worth noting, we actually did get a level up for Sora back in the Traverse Town section of this that gave us a new ability, Combo Master. You actively unlocked that a little bit earlier if you're on the Dream Sword route. You unlocked that at level 50 flat. Meanwhile, the Dream Rod and Dream Shield routes both unlock that at level 54 instead. Combo Master is an interesting ability that allows you to progress to the end of a combo without making contact on an enemy. That dives into an aspect of this series' combat I may have mentioned earlier on in the LP, I just don't remember. Effectively in this series, in order to move on in a physical combo, the prior hit needs to land. So say you have a main physical combo with a combo plus ability on. The combo is then hit 1, 2, 3, 4, where 4 is the finisher. If you land the first 2 hits, that's 1, 2, but if you miss the third, you can't skip from hit 2 to hit 4. You need to start the combo over again. Combo Master lets you actively miss the third hit and go right to 4. It's really neat and is actively just as defensive an ability as it is an offensive one, as the combo finishers themselves often have more knockback and stun potential, meaning you can miss a shot in a tight situation and still push the enemy back. But I tend not to use Combo Master too much here in Kingdom Hearts 1 specifically, if only because I don't rely on combo finishers, especially specialized ones, quite as much as some other players. Kingdom Hearts 2, though, this is quite the good ability, especially when combined with some of the setups using abilities unique to Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically. So I'll be seeing more with that when I actively get to LP in Kingdom Hearts 2 in however many years. Now, the world terminus itself obviously can very well play into the whole this final world feels very alien compared to the rest of the game thing I brought up earlier in the part. But I remember distinctly thinking as a kid, and almost kind of fearing in a way, that the reason that we actively have these world Heartless flashbacks kind of goes into the fact that the Heartless probably take just as much from the world as they do from the citizens from it. So them effectively taking a shred of the world with them into this alien world just was really intimidating to me as a kid. And looking back at that thought in adulthood, I do kind of find it kind of funny that in a way you could also look at sealing the keyhole, allowing you to skip these sections, as sealing them off from taking that part of the world with them. I don't know, it's one of those things where it's just like, the childhood wonderment of something kind of plays into, not even a meta-narrative sense, but like, you add a little bit to the narrative with your own experience type deal, I suppose. It's kind of like how certain games just seem so much larger when you're a kid because A, you're experiencing for the first time, but also there's just so many extra little bits you're unaware of and curious about. I think I may have talked about this, I forget if it was on an LP or on one of my streams, but that's something I actively really miss about playing games when I was really younger. The sense of wonder that came from it. Where I'm now still incredibly enthralled in when I played. Heck, I was really into God of War Ragnarok, which I just finished the other day. But it's a completely different sense from playing games when I was really, really young. Where the boundaries between what is and isn't wasn't as clear, where the questions you'd have were once harder to answer, and the knowledge you'd have would only be able to answer the basic of basics. I don't know why, but something about Kingdom Hearts, especially 1 and 2, really kind of bring this mindset out of me. And I guess it really is just kind of like encapsulating, like, childhood in a way? I don't know, it's hard to explain. If anything, I hope any of you kind of understand what I'm talking about and can put it into better words and conversation and all that. So, a moment ago, we got the Mighty Shield for Goofy. If you're just going through main story not worrying about the synthesis, that is technically one of his best shields in the game. At least for attacking, because it boosts his strength by 15. It has a recoil stat of 90, so he's good at deflecting. It is pretty small, though, so he's not going to be doing much blocking with it. That's a big fire pillar! Time for the final combat section here in the World Terminus, where we're going to be fighting, well, End of the World Heartless, largely Invisibles, I think a Dark Ball or two. But also, there's something a little more unique here. We got this weird room over here. In order to progress here, we need to investigate this machine. Ones born of the heart and darkness, devoid of hearts, ravage all worlds and bring desolation. Seize all hearts and consummate the great heart. All hearts to be one, one heart to encompass all. Realize the destiny, the realm of Kingdom Hearts. The great darkness sealed within the great heart. Progeny of darkness, come back to the eternal darkness, for the heart of light shall unseal the path. 7 hearts, 1 keyhole, 1 key to the door of darkness, tied by 2 keys. The door of darkness to seal the light, none shall pass but shadows, returning to the darkness. Ones born of the heart and darkness, hunger for every heart until the dark door opens. And that spawns in more Heartless for us to fight. So, This specific room is so weirdly alien even within this game that there were fan theories about this machine for almost literal decades. The closest thing we have to an answer about this machine is from lore in the mobile game, which even then, who knows if that's actively what it was for. It's one of the funniest things about the franchise to me, honestly. Upon leaving this room, the fire pillar will be put out and there will now be a hole in its place you can jump down in order to reach our next boss fight. Time for us to brawl with Chernobog from Fantasia, kind of out of nowhere too. Not quite the devil, even though Disney definitely leaned into that angle. Think more a Slavic god of darkness, but even that is kind of disputed. We've got the Neverland flight in this fight, and you should take advantage of that fast movement to get out of the way of his attacks, as they are quite large. Most of his attacks are also fire-based, so having something like the Ifrit ring on or a Faraga ring can go a good distance to help your defense on top of things like Arrow. Attack-wise, he also has basically two variants of most of his attacks that get more powerful later in the fight. He's got a Fire Breath attack that moves from one direction to another early on, but moves the opposite direction more violently later on that does more damage. He can erupt fire from the volcano below him that gets a wider area of effect as well as more power later on in the fight. He can fire 12 homing bullets if you made of light, which is his only non-fire elemental attack. And he can also fire moving rainbows of fire out of his hands. Worth knowing, those last two attacks can both be returned to him with a good Keyblade Strike or Guard for some extra chip damage. He also can and will use his wings to blow you and the party away from him just so he gets a moment to breathe. Safest place in this fight is technically behind his head, but whenever he rears forward in pain, you might want to get out of there as that's when the eruption spell happens. This fight's definitely imposing looking and has some really good atmosphere, but as you can see, you can really worm through his health real fast with even the slightest bit of aggressive play. Just watch out for his damage because, again, he does hurt. For defeating Chernobog, we're going to unlock our final shared ability in the game, Super Glide. By jumping and holding the square button rather than circle, you'll do a much faster glide that can also, I think, keep you above the ground longer as well. I tend not to use it too much because I kind of forget it exists pretty often, I won't lie, but it's nice to have. So, Chernobog, I've also heard rumors about him being a planned final boss at one point, but I think there's even less evidence about that than there was Maleficent being a final boss earlier on in development. I think the thing I've heard more often is that originally there was going to be a Fantasia world early in development that Chernobog would have been the boss of. They decided not to move forward with it, although they kind of actively revisited that idea in a later game. By the way, after we go through this next door here, you might want to dodge to either side as there's going to be a behemoth ready to take a leap at you from a distance that can really surprise you, like that. The thing that's always been kind of funny to me about Chernobog, though, is he does kind of come out of nowhere, not for nothing. But I remember hearing for years that he was an American-exclusive boss fight alongside several other bosses that were added to the international release. That is a misnomer. Chernobog has been in every version of this game that's been released. What wasn't in the original Japanese release of this game was his battle theme. Devil on Bald Mountain, which plays in his segment of Fantasia, was added into the Western release and has been in every release since. In the original Japanese PS2 release, they actively just played one of the standard boss themes, which worked. But Devil on Bald Mountain does so much to carry the atmosphere of that fight, and it was such a good change. I'm assuming it wasn't in the original release due to time constraints or something, but it's really weird when you actively watch footage of the Japanese PS2 release because of it. With the behemoth out of the way, this Heartless sigil is going to start crumbling away behind us. And now it becomes an all-out brawl. We have several waves of Heartless to get through while that door slowly crumbles behind us. It's pretty much all against Heartless from the end of the world here, But this is a long encounter. On its own, this was 4.5 minutes of fighting, which is why I'm speeding it up. But if you can make it through this, you're pretty much there. This is the final gauntlet of the end of the world. We are nearing it on the end game, folks. With that said, we're not gonna quite focus on endgame just yet, as we have some other side quests to go deal with. Going through this door leads to the final rest. This is the final save point in the game. That door there leads to the final boss, and they give you a Mega Elixir there just as a safety checkpoint. We still have quite a bit left to do. For one thing, there's some new Ansem reports left to collect that were added in the original Final Mix release. There's that new cup we still have to take care of in all three of its variations. There's several super bosses for us to do. And there's that dirty synthesis word that I've been talking about loosely the entire LP up to now. We could just finish the game right now and be done maybe by the 19-hour mark. Time to spend almost as much time as I've spent playing the game up to now doing side quests. So thankfully it doesn't take nearly as many parts because of how much I end up cutting out for reasons. So, I've loosely talked about synthesis before. This is where I start doing my synthesis grind. We only start with 6 recipes out of 33. You unlock another 6 after completing one set of 6. I am going to showcase you the current totals I have for synthesis materials in a sped up section coming up here, so we can see where I'm at and where we need to get to by the end of the synthesis grind. I'm going to warn you right now, unless you super care about doing completionism stuff or getting trophies, I really do not recommend doing the synthesis side quest here in Kingdom Hearts 1, especially in Final Mix, as the rewards are good, but they aren't worth the time investment in my eyes in Kingdom Hearts 1, even if you do set synthesis farming along the way in stages across the game, like doing the synthesis farming you can in the first few worlds for early recipes before accessing Agrabah, for instance. With that said, if you have the money for it, easily the easiest synthesis material to get in a farm early on here is by coming over here to the item shop run by Huey, Dewey, and Louie, as you can just buy Ori Calicoms for 5,000 money apiece. Selling some excess weapons or consumables you're not going to use, like camping sets, can actively really help you get as many as you need here. Which, thankfully, with as many of them as I've collected in the LP up to now, I only need to collect another 2 to get to 19 total. I think you could have potentially gotten the other 2 either from other hour marks over at the Neverland Big Ben Clock Tower, or from side stuff along the way. The first thing I want to actively grab, though, is stuff here in Wonderland. As you might recall, there was the giant shadows that showed up here every now and then as a rare enemy encounter in the Bizarre Room. They have the first item I want to get, Fury Stones. And not for nothing, with this many shadows around, this is also probably the best place in the game to farm out lucid shards you'll need for any synthesis requiring that. If memory serves, you specifically need, I think, 35 lucid shards and 5 fury stones from this type of encounter to finish all the synthesis stuff. I'll do a proper checklist when we actively do all the synthesis at the end of the farm, though. I'm largely just going to showcase the best places to get every single stone type in the next couple parts, on top of doing some side quests along the way, just so I can do this in stages and not drive myself mad just doing all the synthesis stuff in a row. As I mentioned, I believe, earlier in the LP with the Giga Shadows, the way their little mini-game works is that you get more likelihoods of a Fury Stone for however many you defeat of them in a row without getting hit by one. You get one at first at a 10% chance by defeating 3, a 20% chance by defeating 4, a 35% chance at defeating 5, a 50% chance at defeating 6, and if you defeat all 7, you guarantee getting, I think, 2 of them outright, which is really nice. Because the Giga Shadows themselves are Final Mix exclusive, though, so are the Fury Stones, so if you're playing either version of Vanilla PS2, be it the Japanese PS2 release or international, you don't need to worry about farming this part out at all. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 36, we continue the synthesis farm on top of taking care of some other side quests along the way if memory serves. See you guys then.